Okay, arithmetic with decimals. Now there's a lot of questions where you're multiplying or dividing by hundreds or thousands, things that are a 1 with lots of zeros. And they're just a question of moving the decimal point the right number of places. So 2.9 times 100 times 100 is going to move the decimal 2 places, so it's 290. Dividing by 10, that's going to move the decimal point 1 place and make the number smaller. So 7.5 divided by 10 is 0.75. Then we've got some questions with other decimals. 0.75 plus 0.5. Now maybe you can just do that in your head and get 1.25, but if you need to write it down, the important thing is to remember to keep things lined up. So 0.75 and 0.5, and that lines up at the decimal point. So when you add them up, you are getting 5 there, 7 plus 5 is 12, 2 carry 1, and then 0 plus 0 plus the 1 you carried makes 1.25. So if you can't do it in your head and you do need to write it down, the important thing is just keep it lined up at the decimal point. 0.25 times 80. Now, I'm just thinking that 0.25 I know is the same as a quarter. So the question is asking me a quarter of 80. When you see a times sign, a multiplication sign, and it's in relation to decimals or fractions, you can think of it as saying of. So a quarter of 80 is 20. Right, here's a couple more where the decimal moves. 62.3 times 100, so that's going to be a bigger number, 6230. So the decimal has moved 2 places. 7.5 divided by 100, the number is going to get smaller and the decimal is going to move 2 places. So it's going to be 0.075. More with adding things up. 0.35 plus 3.1 is 3.45. Again, if you need to write that down, just remember to line it up at the decimal point. 33 divided by 4. Now, when I'm dividing by 4 in my head, I divide by 2 and divide by 2 again. So mentally what I'm doing is saying, okay, 33 divided by 2 is 16.5, and I can just about cope with that in my head. And then divide by 2 again makes 8.25. If you can't do that sort of thing in your head, then you may have to just work it out the long way. 33 divided by 4. 4 goes into 3. 0 times 4 makes 0. 3 minus 0 is 3, and bring down the 3. 4 goes into 33 8 times. 8 times 4 is 32. 33 minus 32 is 1, and then bring down a 0 after the decimal point. 4 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. 10 minus 8 is 2. Bring down a 0. And 4 goes into 20 5 times exactly. 5 times 4 is 20, and nothing left over. So 33 divided by 4 is 8.25. That's quite a lot of work if you have to do it that way. Okay, just run through these quickly. 2.45. 36 divided by 5. Now, if you're dividing by 5, the way I do that in my head is to say, okay, if I start with twice as much, 72, and divide it by twice as much, it should give me the same answer. So 36 divided by 5 is the same as 72 divided by 10, which is 7.2. So that's how I do it quickly in my head. Otherwise, you might need to set it out the long way. Okay, 0.78 minus 1. I've seen a lot of people get this one wrong over the years. You're doing a smaller number minus a bigger number, so you should end up with a minus number. Now, if you just do it the other way around and think, okay, what would 1 minus 0.78 be? That would be 0.22. And if you're doing it the other way around, it's going to be minus that. So my tip for doing a smaller number minus a bigger number is to do it the other way around and then just stick the minus on it afterwards. 37.06 plus 0.4 is 37.46. Again, just keep the decimal points lined up if you have to write that out longhand. Okay, here's another one with a small number minus a bigger number. So 0.3 minus 1. So the answer should be a minus number. And think of it the other way around. If it was 1 minus 0.3, it would be 0.7. But it's actually 0.3 minus 1, so it's going to be minus 0.7. And then December 2012, 4.02 plus 1.3 makes 5.32. And again, if you write that down with everything lined up at the decimal point, then you should see that fall into place. Moving on, 37 divided by 4. Well, again, when I'm dividing by 4, I divide by 2 and 2 again in my head. So 37 divided by 2 is something I can do in my head, 18.5. And then divide by 2 again gives me 9.25. So just doing it in my head, and if you can't cope with that, you can always set it out the long way, but that's a lot of work for 1 mark. So 37 divided by 4. 4 goes into 3 0 times. 0 times 4 is 0. 3 minus 0 is 3. Bring down the 7. 4 goes into 37 9 times to make 36. 9 times 4 is 36. Subtract and bring down a 0. 4 goes into 10 twice. 2 times 4 is 8. 10 minus 8 is 2. Bring down a 0. And 4 goes into 20 5 times. So 37 divided by 4 is, decimal here, 9.25. If you're needing to do that the long way, then you're probably using more time than you get for each question. .5 times 2.5. Well, 0.5 is the same as a half, so I'm looking at that and thinking a half of 2.5, which is 1.25. And then finally, a 1 minus 0.35 is 0.65. Not a minus number this time, because we've got a bigger number minus a smaller number.